This is the Modern Mastery Unleashed podcast.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Modern Self-Mastery Unleashed, the podcast. You've got your hosts, Paul Davidson and myself, Natalia Edelmann, and we are beyond excited and ever so grateful to have Caz Hitchcock, the creator of the gravity technique, with us today. And she has such a journey, such a story to tell us, but she's also going to help us really master our body messages and understand what the pain or what our bodies are trying to tell us, both on the inside and as well on the outside. So thank you so much for being here, Caz. It's so wonderful to have you.
Thank you so much for hosting me today. It's a real joy to be here. Come and have a chat on your podcast.
Oh, I mean, we've known Caz for a few years now because we've, the work that I can't even wait to get into it. And I thought maybe we'd start off just by having our listeners just understand what the gravity technique is and how you developed it before we get into some really juicy questions here.
How did I create it? Well, I'm a product of my environment. So I had my first surgery when I was 12, left me with an 11-inch scar from my navel to my spine for a congenital kidney issue. And the thought process at that point was to save the kidney. So I underwent quite radical surgery to try and leave the kidney in situ because I was very young. And ultimately it didn't work. So 8 years later, I went back in, had another surgery to remove the kidney itself. And then about 18 months after that, I was running into some scar tissue issues. And then that was when we found out that I had another lovely genetic, and we all have these things inside ourselves. You know, we are a unique makeup of genetics and you know what it is to be human. And it turns out that I don't have an off switch when it comes to producing scar tissue, and it was stuck everywhere. So I underwent an operation to take a lot of the internal scar tissue out and to revise the original scar because it was a bit of a mess by that point. But the upshot was that going through the healthcare system was very much sort of the sticking plaster approach. We were fixing mechanical things, but there was no real support for how to live well post-surgery, how to support your new body with, you know, that has essentially almost been cut in half. So when I was 15, I was definitely going sideways. I don't think a heavy school bag was helping me. And my mom took me to yoga, and it was really boring. And it was this real sort of drafty school hall, hatha yoga, breathe in, breathe out, which is wonderful. But when you're 15, it's not so great. So, but that was kind of my first experience of starting to look after myself, take responsibility for my own health and well-being post-surgery. And then, you know, obviously subsequent surgeries, my yoga practice kind of underpinned that. I got into Ashtanga yoga when I was 20, which is quite a vigorous jumping around form of yoga. Madonna was doing it, which was why myself and my friend decided that, you know, this was a new thing that we really needed to do. And as it turned out, I turned up, she didn't. And I went into the class and I got started. And then that was kind of the real beginning of it all, you know, exploring my own body and starting to get to know myself and work through the mental side of things as well. And there's so much, I think, with this that what we don't address is the mental side of things. It wasn't until many years later, when I was 31, and I decided to go to counseling, and I went in and I said, you know, I don't feel so good. My mental fitness was quite poor at the time, and I put the whole thing down to the fact I was getting divorced. And the counselor came around and said, well, I don't think it's anything to do with that. I think you have PTSD. And I didn't even know what that was at the time. It was completely a new, just a whole new thing. And the conversations that we have around post-traumatic stress and, you know, how our environment and how events in our life impact us mentally over time, those conversations just weren't happening back then. So it was a complete shock to me that something that had happened when I was 12 was still having such a profound impact on my life. But as I was sort of going through the motions of yoga and then out of yoga and into the body movement that I now work with, and also just testing everything out. So I'm naturally curious, always got into trouble when I was a kid for just why. I'm very interested in the why. So yoga took me into Pilates, and then Pilates took me into Qigong and Tai Chi. I spent a few years in China where I picked up, you know, I got really into traditional Chinese medicine, and I was fascinated by this prevention mentality. 6 a.m. Everybody is out of their apartment. They're all in the front courtyard, and everybody's doing their movement, you know, Tai Chi, Qigong, moving with swords and fans and all this kind of really interesting stuff. We just don't have that here in the UK. And, you know, what it's like to live a life without a healthcare system that is free and supports you. So just sort of going through that, I trained to become a yoga teacher in 2007. And then from there, the people that came were never looking for the yoga class. They were always, you know, somebody said, you can help me with this shoulder, or somebody said, you can help me with this hip, or, you know, just sort of moving through that. And then, yeah, so the people that came were as busted as I was. So that took me off then into a 15-year kind of rabbit hole, if you like, into fascia research, the connective tissue body, and how I can help my clients and support them better, because they all come with the same question that I do. Is I've been through this thing. I'm working with a lady at the moment that's post breast cancer, and she's a young woman, she's 30, and whilst she's had, you know, the surgery and she's been through her cancer journey, now that she's in remission, her question is the same: how do I support myself well? So that's what we do. And the gravity techniques are a set of movements and manual fascial release exercises to provide you with a toolkit to look after yourself. And they button into your day-to-day activities. So we have teeth cleaning pose, kettle boiling pose, how to support yourself well sitting at the desk, how to pick up your kids better, how to drive your car in a more aligned and intelligent way. So yeah, that's what we do here.
That's absolutely brilliant. And, you know, I know Paul is going to come in here, but I so resonate with your story, just little pinpoints of it, you know, with the hip pain. And I remember wanting to go on the start of my wellness journey was finding Ashtanga yoga as well. And that's actually where I also found yin yoga. And it was the first time that I started learning about fascia. And like, I cannot wait to get into this conversation, everybody, because once you understand what this is, you're going to just have a totally different relationship with your body. And just super quick, for those people who don't know what fascia is,
yeah,
can you say it in like a summed up way?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a module called WTF, which is what's this fascia? Because for a lot of people, you know, it is the third component of the body that we just don't talk about. So whilst we're taught at school that we've got this skeleton, we've got bones that prop us up, and we've got some muscles that attach to the bones, what we don't talk about is the connective tissue body. And the reason for that is that previously, it was just discarded in the dissection lab as packing material. Didn't really know what it was. So kind of the skin comes off, and then, you know, the fascia came off, and then we wanted to get to the, you know, the muscles and the bones, the bit that we really knew about. And also on a bit of a nasty level. The embalming process destroys fascia, turns it into desiccated coconut, so you can't see it.
Wow.
So advances in our embalming techniques and advances in kind of just our technology, really, those leaps forward that happen have allowed us to be able to look at bodies closer to their original life state than we ever have been able to before. So yes, I spend my time in the lab taking bodies apart because we want to see, we can learn so much from that. It's really important that we do. So fascia is a cling film, if you like. It's an endless web. We are in a complex piece of origami. So this cling film folds and folds and folds over everything. It covers your bones, it covers your muscles, it covers your nervous system, it covers everything. And it's responsible for our movement. So if we think about muscles as the power, your fascia is, if we think about muscles as the coffee, your fascia is the mug. So your muscles are the power behind it, but the fascia is the direction. So for you with your bodybuilding, you guys kind of take fascia in a different direction, because actually it's not useful for me to have muscles that pop all over the place. What I want is a functional muscle that's going to elongate in a certain direction that gives me momentum for movement. And that's useful. And of course, in bodybuilding, we master what fascia is, and then we bend it to our will a little bit, which is great fun. But understanding that fascia is the driver behind the movement. And it's not just about individual isolation and manipulation of muscles. We have to look at the fascial component as well. And then in recent years, fascia's really started to gather momentum in the body world, because when we're moving, we know now that the fascia is a reflection of the mind. It is deeply affected by the mind, and the mind is a reflection of the body. So there's a two-way communication happening between your fascial system into your brain, but also whatever happens to you that's processed on a cognitive level is then translated through the body. So recent things, trauma in the tissues, When the Body Says No by Gabor Mate, and the other book, which has just come completely out of my head, but it will come back to me in a second. But we're starting to look at that correspondence between the brain and the body, and how our movement patterns are a reflection of our experiences, how we experience the external world, but also our fascia is a reflection of preconceived ideas, but also conditioning. So things like Maslow's hierarchy start to really come into their own here. The need to belong. We have to be identified by our primary carers, because otherwise we're going to get cast out. So the need to belong means I will change my movement pattern to mimic that of my primary carers. So we talk about genetic hereditary, but we also talk about learned behavior hereditary. So if my parents walk with a certain body type and shape, and actually when we couple together, we start to mimic each other as partners, because it makes us identifiable. So we shift and change our naturally embedded movement pattern. Is laid down at embryo stage. We have this blueprint in the back of the head for movement. We don't tell the baby to bang his heels. We don't say, right, come on, you've got to do your psoas workout now, because you bang your heels, and then when the psoas is ready, you flip onto your front and then you stand up. And we don't have to do that. It's already pre-programmed in there. We are born to walk. So with that in mind, it's looking at what is learned behavior hereditary. And we have to look at the whole, it's looking at humans in their unique, beautiful way. Because there is no cookie cutter approach to anything, because we're not the same. We're not gingerbread humans. So it's looking at people with nobody's history will be like yours. You are unique, but equally nobody's bone structure is like yours. Nobody's muscle makeup is like yours. Nobody's fascial makeup is like yours. Your body is as unique to you as your fingerprint. So it's really, from this point of view, it's starting to look at people as their unique functioning whole, and then tapping into that. What do you need? So I think that makes sense. So does that help?
Amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? I mean, it's like you say, the fascial movement has gathered some pace. A really good friend of mine, incredibly successful entrepreneur. He practices a martial art, and that's a big part of his morning routine is a myofascial release procedure. When we first started talking about it, it was about a year ago, and he was like, "It's just life changing," you know, and it's incredible, really, because it's kind of late to the party, but like you quite rightly say, it's so unique. And I think just the odds of us sitting here being born to our parents is 400 trillion to 1.
Wow.
should tell us that we are so unique, but it's so true, isn't it? Like we have these pre-programmed perfect postures that are second nature, but that environment is so powerful, isn't it? And I'd only come to learn about that really in the last 6 years, how impactful that's been to me personally. And then once you become awake, again, we talk about the hierarchy of needs, right? And the moment you're aware, then you can see it everywhere and around you, because we have those mirror neurons, don't we, that you cannot help but mimic the behavior of the people closest to you. It's just how it is. And that's why who you surround yourself with is so important, but you're so spot on with that, and it fascinates me. I was going to say fascinates, or I should say that really, shouldn't I? Is that a new word?
Apparently it is. I heard it a while back. Someone called it fascinating fascia.
Yeah,
which is a mouthful in itself. But yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for that. I think that's really important to understand, that we do carry those suppressed emotions and micro and macro traumas in our bodies, and it's the body always keeps score, right? I mean, you know more
That's
about this than I.
the book. The Body Keeps the Score. That was the one.
Yeah,
We'll have to put the books in the show notes as well, because I know that our listeners are always wanting to learn more about the books that we read.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like going on with like we've talked about kind of the trauma in the body, emotions, trapped emotions. I know there's even this book we were talking about the other week. It's escaped me now, but it's how your body, metaphysical anatomy, I think it is. So when you kind of think of it all together, like what is the pain and what does pain in your body signal to you? Like, how can we be better listeners?
I think that's such an important point, Natalia. We have a societal and cultural tilt towards making pain go away. There's a multi-billion-dollar industry behind it. It's interesting that every time we look at something that's counterintuitive, there's always somebody selling something behind it. So making pain go away is big business. So painkillers, it's all there in your language, painkillers, steroid injections, rub some gel on it and just keep going. I do have a really naughty post that goes around every so often, and it is real as well, but it is a painkiller advert, and it says you supply the yoga class and we'll supply the pain relief. So just masking over the top of it and carrying on regardless really makes me light up like a human torch, because it's not, if your body is your best friend, and it is, because let's face it, you're in here together until your final day. If your body is your best friend, how are you treating your friend? Now, I have an amazing best friend, but she would not want to be friends with me if I treated her the way that some of us treat our bodies. Are we on good communication terms? Are we pushing and pulling our body around? Are we not speaking? A lot of people say, when we talk about the relationship with your body, they're like, well, we're not on speaking terms. We haven't spoken for years. So, you know, are we ignoring each other? How is that reciprocity? A lot of us, this is my own personal journey, I was mad as hell at my body for letting me down. I really was. I was so angry when we got right down to the root of it. There was real anger and sadness and a break in the trust connection. So surgery does that. And deep trauma does that. There's a break in the trust connection between the body and the brain. And then we kind of crossed arms, feeling grumpy, you know, not speaking to our body, not listening to our body at all, because we feel that it's let us down and we don't want to listen. So, you know, that kind of really sitting down and assessing how your relationship is with your body. Are you listening to it? And pain is just one of the methods that your body has of talking to you. It's asking you to, can we respond appropriately is another thing. And, you know, sometimes we need to go and learn something new. We need a toolkit to be able to respond appropriately to what our body's asking us for. But initially, it's just acknowledging that your body needs something. It's not happy and something needs to change, and it needs to change as soon as possible, particularly as our pain levels go up. You know, I work with people who are a 9 or a 10 on the chronic pain or chronic joint pain chart. So they come to me when it's become life limiting and they're missing out on the things that they love to do. So this is when the messages are now, we're reaching critical mass, and it's unavoidable. And really what we want to do is develop the communication with our body and develop an interoception, so awareness of our internal environment, to a point where we hear the subtle shifts. We don't have to we don't have to get to the point where the wheels are really falling off it. So yeah, pain is something that we want to be paying attention to, if your kid told you that they had some real pain in their body, you wouldn't ignore that. You wouldn't go, no, it's fine, just, you know, come back in a week and keep going on as normal. Because I hear this from people. I was working with a lady with low back issue, and she said, you know, I can't get to this right now. I have to take my kids to school, and I have to, you know, I've got other commitments. But you wouldn't tell somebody that you loved that you've got other commitments, just ignore that right now, or I can't deal with that right now. So it's starting to build that compassion and that friendship with yourself.
Yes, self-compassion is a big one, isn't it? I mean, coming back to the legend that is Louise Hay.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of sums a lot of dis-ease up, I guess. Yeah. It's the ability of how much can you come back to actually love yourself and not continually beat yourself up. But it's so interesting what you just said, was picking up on that, because normally the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? until it's our bodies, and we think, you know, like Jim Rohn said, you know, treat your body like a temple, not like an old woodshed. It's the only the only place you've got to live in this lifetime, and it's what an amazing vehicle. But like you say, like, obviously I do believe that it should be worked and used. So you know what you don't use, you lose. And obviously to maintain sort of strength and function, it's got to be used. But listening to my body has taken me a while, and I didn't realize how much pain I was carrying in between the mind and body connection. And I guess it's a trauma response to a degree, as most things are, that you hold and you don't listen. And I think that's so amazing what you said about the relationship between yourself and your body, and that we just don't want to hear it. I would say is that people just don't want to sit with themselves. They just want to be entertained and move away from pain by all of these masking things, the social media, the TV, the Netflix, the drink, the whatever it is, just to move away from pain by something that just masks it. And I think that, as you quite rightly said, like pharmaceutical industries have just in my experience, no real no aspiration to heal us. So we lost to heal us, but just keep us dependent. And I think that knowing how to do that ourselves by listening to ourselves is a massive benefit. But hopefully we get Caz back.
I hope we get her back too. That was such a fascinating conversation. And we were going to get into, I mean, Caz touched on it a bit earlier, but in terms of like the connection between your inner and outer world. And I'll tell you something. So on my like retreat yin yoga discovery, I don't know if I'm for those of you that are just listening on the podcast, I'm holding up a lacrosse ball. And this is like one of my favorite tools to do some myofascial release. And like even just like putting it and leaning against a wall to just and feeling into like where you feel tightness, where you feel constriction, it can really, really help. And like, as I was saying in the beginning, yin yoga, if like we do so much yang activity, like the dynamic, the hot, the cardio, the power, the movement, the dynamism, like we rarely sit in stillness, which is what yoga can really, yin yoga in particular, can really help you with, because you're staying in poses for like 5 minutes, even up to like 20 minutes, half an hour for advanced. And it's just amazing the feeling, like whenever I do any, because I'm traditionally tight hips. And that was my signal to like listen to my body being like, you need to do something here, because this is like going to be life limiting, I think is what Caz said, which I loved. And you know, after you come out of a pose and you feel the space being created. I don't know if you ever feel that way, Paul. You know, when you've just finished a stretch and it's like a really good stretch that you've really let yourself like feel into, just let go, release, and
breathe
suddenly you're like,
yeah. Create space. That's exactly what it is.
It does.
Yeah. It's an important time with yourself as well, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think that's like that mirror, like that internal, external world. Like when you feel that tightness, there's probably something that's trying to show you a message that there's something not necessarily tight, but there's something just not right. And it's funny that when you just actually listen and take the time to just be with your body and do the whatever, if it's stretching or release or the myofascial stuff, how different your external world becomes, because you are mentally less, like you're mentally more fit. Maybe that's what it is.
That's exactly what it is, isn't it? I suppose it relates to the body perfectly, doesn't it? Because I think when we're extremely tight, externally we feel more constricted.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when we feel like we've created space in the body and it's moving more freely, you feel more expansive and free in your day-to-day life, don't you? Like there's more ease and less resistance, I guess. And that's definitely how I feel. Like when I practice yoga, I feel it's incredible. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. And wish I'd started it much earlier. But again, that's conditioning. I just didn't know. But then when you know better, you must do better, because there's no excuse again then once you know better. So
Exactly.
But yeah, it's creating that space is just wonderful, isn't it? You think, why did this so much? It's crazy.
And that like trust factor, when I heard, I don't know when it was definitely like post COVID. So it would have been within the last 2 years, but, replacing detention in schools with yoga. Like, I love that so much because it's not, okay, you've done something bad, now you're punished. It's like, you've done something bad. Why don't you go sit with yourself and figure out like what's going on the inside to release whatever that, I hate to use positive and negative, but those low vibrational feelings of anger or hate or frustration or sadness or, whatever it is. And I think the world really needs that starting from a very young age. Like if this kind of work was in schools as part of your physical education, it would be and think of the change it would, and that's what we're all about here at Self Mastery. Like, because in order to change the world around you, you have to change yourself. And Caz, we're gonna have her back because she's in Italy. I think something happened with her connection, but we're gonna have to have her back because
For sure.
that was literally the tip of the iceberg when it comes to her work and fascia and really addressing what chronic pain is. Like, I'll share with you what her mission is. Like, her mission is to change the mindset that living in pain and feeling out of control is just part of life and something we have to put up with.
Yeah, just bear with. Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
It's crazy. And these are the people we want to surround ourselves in this wellness revolution, because we always say, like, wellness, it's not just a spa day. It's not just a yoga class. It's a whole thing. It's your state of being, and it's your active choices. And here comes Caz again. Hi, darling. I'm so sorry. That's okay. We kind of were picking up a little bit. I mean, we talked about like what the pain means, and we were talking about, how we were going to get into some stuff around like the internal world and your external world. And we were saying how usually when you're experiencing some sort of tightness or limitation in your physical body, there's generally something happening on the outside world. So would love to hear your thoughts on that, because Paul and I exchanged our thoughts.
Absolutely. And obviously we know what's happened because Caz had listened to her body and she just did a quick myofascial release. That's what, and no time like the present. So, that's what's happened. I know it. You don't have to say we know what's happened. But yeah, no, I think that's true. I was saying to Nat that it's a perfect analogy, isn't it? Like when in our bodies we feel tight, constricted, and things are painful, that the external world feels more constricted, more resistance, more painful, more resistance, just more difficulty, because we haven't created that internal space, which is more expansive physically and mentally, in our outer world. But yeah, if you could speak to that, like what that correlation is, the inner and the outer world, I think that would be really useful.
Yeah, well, I mean, on a mechanical level, fascia is the interface between how we process our internal environment, but it's also the interface how we process the external environment. And I think it is really overlooked, but there is, like you say, there is a conversation that's starting to happen around this. We are starting to become more aware of the fact that when we're running into difficulty in our mind, then that's reflected through the body. And I definitely, that was my own journey in 2018. I spent 9 months of 2018 in bed because with a fibromyalgia type illness, which is allodynia, which is a scar tissue fibromyalgia. And whilst there is the presence, and I think this is a really great subject to get into, because I detest the word psychosomatic. I think there is nothing worse than being in severe pain and going to see a healthcare practitioner who says, I think this is all in your head. It is the most disheartening, terrible thing to say. So I think just getting into that and sort of looking at actually what it is, what that is and what it does. And for me, you cannot negate the fact that there's too much scar tissue. It's stuck around most of my major organs in my right side. But at the time, when I was very poorly, it was like, you know, I couldn't understand why this was happening to me. I didn't understand why my body was so distressed all of a sudden. And it was over a period of about 2 weeks, I started to not feel very well. And by the end of those 2 weeks, I was in bed and I stayed there for another 9 months. It was so debilitating. And at the time, I couldn't get to the bottom of it. Now that I've done the work and the recovery subsequently, when I look back over the run-up, the 5-year run-up to that period of time, you can see every red flag all the way along. You know, there was marked moments in that 5-year period where my body was like, I'm not happy with this. We need to change this. We need to, you know, and also processing your sorry.
Okay.
I completely lost my train of thought.
Processing your
number of red flags.
Processing your thoughts. So for me, it was processing things like boundary work and processing traumas that had happened in the past. But also what I found was the tighter my mind became, the tighter the tissues became. So it was just an inside job. I ran out of road with the NHS very quickly because all they had was heavy duty painkillers and the pathway that they had initially offered when I was 25, which was, you know, we just let the scar tissue go. Then when it becomes life limiting, we do more surgery, we take the scar tissue out, and then we let it develop again over a period of about 5 to 7 years, and then more surgery, and then, you know, this repetitive cycle. And at 25, I just decided that did not seem like a good idea, and I wanted to find a different way forward. And then in 2018, it was sort of, well, we told you this would happen, and I did not agree with that. I still wanted to self-manage my scar tissue. I still wanted to continue on, but this was where sort of the mind bit came in for me, because whilst I had quite a strong physical practice, I still hadn't quite mastered the art of working with my mind. I had been taught to formally meditate years before. I wasn't really formally meditating. I didn't have time for that shit. I had, you know, clients to see and a kid to look after. You know, I've been a lone parent for a really long time. So I was busy. So, you know, it was sort of, I can meditate, but, you know, I haven't got time right now. And then all of a sudden it just came knocking. You know, when you've got 9 months in bed, nothing really else to do other than meditate, you know, just laying still was what my body wanted to do, and my mind just sort of got dragged along with it. But as I started to work with my mind on a really, really deep level, and there was a load of, you know, stuff that needed to clear out of there, but the more I started to relax into my mind, the more the tissues relinquished their grip on my organs, and I got better, and I've been well for 3-4 years now. But it's been a journey. And now what I'm left with is a stress early warning system. You know, fibromyalgia and those other chronic pain issues are demonized as being something that is a really, really bad thing. But actually, you can master the art of these. You know, the body is in distress, and we have to go and find out why. And it's not an easy path. It's not an easy path at all. There are a lot of, you know, really tricky things to navigate going forwards. And then now I have to live as a boundaried, true, authentic self. And I love this because this is all marketing, isn't it? People go, be your true, authentic self. It's really hard because you have to be truthful. And if something isn't working for you, there's a lot of no's. There's a lot of challenging conversations that have to happen in there. So it's not this, you know, be your true authentic self today.
So much easier said than done.
Yeah, you have to get into your mind. So your fascia is the interface. It's processing your external world, but it's also processing your internal world. So you have to get congruent, and we have to listen. I think that's the most important thing, going into silence and sitting within your body. And I can say that, and it sounds really easy. It's not easy, you know. And I wanted to just very quickly touch on something that Paul said earlier about, you know, getting to know yourself. It's not our fault. We're not taught this stuff. They should teach this stuff in schools. I'd love to see fascia on the curriculum. I'd love to see, you know, kids being taught how to switch your phone off and just sit, because most of us don't know how to do that. And I, you know, I was taught in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition as part of my teacher training, and it was hideous. You know, just sit here, just look at your mind. It was like, oh, okay. I'd never been in there before, and there was a shitstorm in there. I did not want to go in there and play with myself. It's like, you know, going through the Rolodex of your life and looking at each individual part. And, you know, so I was away on retreat, and I go away for a week and I go and sit in silence. And that's not for the faint-hearted, but I go and sit in silence for 7 days up at the monastery up in Scotland. And going there, I'm always, because we can take this with I always say a childlike approach. It's fun. It's a game. You know, you're messing about with something. And I love that on day 3, my brain says the same thing. It goes, are we really stuck here for a week? Because this is really freaking boring. I am bored. And I just think it's lovely, because we're not taught this stuff, you know. We're not taught this stuff, to be okay with being bored, to be okay being in non-distraction, to be okay to sit in ourselves. So actually, when we come to it later on in life, it is tricky. It requires support and a lot of hand-holding to go through that reconnection process to ourselves. So there is understanding the mechanics of it on a physical level, but there has to be, you know, there's this whole other dimension to it.
So, what an amazing conversation, I was just saying. And stillness is the key, right? And it's probably the most simple and one of the most very difficult things to do, as you quite rightly say. So, like sitting with myself in silence is part of my daily practice, which I found incredibly difficult to start with. But I'm straight in now. Just because I want the messages. I want to come home without any input. So no phone for the first hour of my day. I just want the inputs. I want the messages. I want my messages to come through to me, but, you know, from my higher self, and whatever you want to call it, or, you know, just for a bit of me to come through without any inputs. Because you're so right. I mean, I think it was an ancient philosopher said that all problems would be solved if a man could sit with himself for half an hour in silence. And I think that's not just a man, but that was the quote. But the stillness is the key. And going back to obviously health, and something that I heard a while ago, which is health is a crown that the well person wears that only the ill person can see. And I think that is so true, isn't it? It's like if you don't make time for your wellness, you'll make time for your illness, and you know, you make that choice. And I think that what you're speaking about is just so needed in the world right now. I mean, my God, it's never been needed more. But like I say, it's counterculture, isn't it? You're saying no, that there's work, there is some work to be done, which, to start with, everything's hard before it's easy, right? You know, you've got to spend some time with yourself and listen, which is gonna take some practice, and, like you say, some real support. And I think it's amazing that you're in the world doing this work. It's obviously your calling to do this, and we're just pumped to have you here, sharing this to the wider audience. And obviously it's very close to home for many people. I'm sure a lot of people and relatives are in chronic pain. So you might well be inundated after this. But one of my very close relatives, my sister-in-law, in fact, is suffering very, very badly with fibromyalgia. So, so my ears are pricking up more so than just a general awesomeness of why this is needed in the world, but just because of it's so prominent when you look around. I mean, you probably do this. You must do this, right? When you just go to the shops or something, and you look, and you see half the people, what they're not. I'm not judging. I'm just reporting. But what they've got in their trolley, what's on the conveyor belt, most people can hardly walk about. And you think, and you observe, don't you? Like, if we follow the advice of what we're supposed to be doing and what the masses do, it's probably wrong decisions. But due to awareness and programming and cultural conditioning and stuff like that, isn't it? But what would you say some of the key takeaway strategies are that people could implement in their lives to start making a change, would you say, Caz?
Yeah, I think there's some real salient points in there. The illness epidemic, or the somebody said to me, we're living longer than we ever have. But actually our quality of life is lower than it's ever been.
That's never touched on.
No. Yeah, the driver behind TGT, the gravity technique, and the driver behind me living this way is because, we don't know it for sure, but nobody in my family dies, right? So it's possible that we have a longevity gene in there somewhere. My nana's 96, and I have her sister's still alive, and there's some real OGs in our family. But the thing for me is that if I'm stuck in here until, if I'm living in here until that kind of time period, I do not want it to be decrepit. Quality of life is everything. It's not length of life, it's your quality. But the illness epidemic that we are suffering at the moment is just a reflection of the level of disconnect we are currently in. So like you say, if you're connected to your body, you can't eat Jaffa cakes. Sorry, Jaffa cakes creators, whoever you are. But, you can't eat like other sugary products are available. But, when you can't ignore the conversation around sugar, and then, and then live in your body. I was just recently working with somebody who's a dietitian, and the exercise that we were given was to write down how you feel 30 minutes after eating anything. Well, that was interesting. Because some of the things that I really enjoyed eating, my body clearly was not enjoying 30 minutes later, and it was such an eye-opener. So, like you say, this being able to go inside ourselves and sit with ourselves it can be confronting, but it's very revealing. So when we are connected to our bodies, it's very difficult to drink the wine and eat the donuts. Yeah. But there is an education piece that needs to happen on there. And I've recently discovered this, that, because we live in this world and we're reading this stuff all the time. I don't know about you, but my Instagram is full of Gabor Mate and the Zoe app, and, all of these different things. Basically, it's wellness gram. It's not Instagram anymore. That's my Instagram. I think that's normal because it's been there so long now. I think that's normal. I look at other people's Instagram and it's like, wow, that's interesting. So it's where our focus goes.
Always.
Then we tap that, and then the education starts to come in. But if we're not aware that we need that education piece in the first place, then we can go along being, grossly misinformed. Like you say, we are subject to marketing. So we get lulled into this, we think we're doing right, but actually we're not in receipt of the full facts. I think things that we can do straight away, because there's everything that you can do. That's why we do teeth cleaning pose and kettle boiling pose. Kettle boiling pose is amazing. You have a worktop right next to you that you can stick your hands on and stretch your body out and, do all sorts of fun stuff. So with regards to fascia, we talk about it being this cling film, but it's tubules of a viscose fluid called cerebral spinal fluid. So yes, that is in your spinal cord, but it's also the fascia is distributing cerebral spinal fluid throughout your whole body. It is the most potent healing agent in your body. So where it's not flowing, where we've got stagnation, we're going to run into difficulty. The tissues will start to change and what we call dis-ease, those tight bits, those sticky bits. Follow the why. It will tell you everything. My shoulder is like this. Why? Because I'm holding it up. Why? Because I'm sitting at the desk for 6 hours a day. Why? Because it's my job. Okay, now we've got something to work with. And then the question is, how do I support myself better? I think it's Tony Robbins that says the quality of questions. Yeah. Follow the why. Why have I got fibromyalgia? Because my body's really distressed. Why? And they actually, with regards to chronic pain, may lead you down a path where the questions have got some really funky answers. In my case, I needed to get divorced for a second time. I was not happy about that at all. And I did not want to face that. But if you don't stop, your body will stop you. You can't avoid this stuff forever. It's going to come up and it's going to grab you by the scruff of the neck and it will make you stop. So, you don't know where that's going to take you. And like I say, this is the courageous path. It's not it's very easy to do the wine and the jam cakes, and watch Netflix or whatever it is and put it off. But so that stagnation, that fluid flow, we're always looking for fluid flow. And that's as simple as going for a walk. Press with your big toes, feel your legs through your body, make it childlike, go down the thing with your arms waving and your butt going from side to side and all of that stuff. I won't get into movement patterns, but we've changed the way that we walk to fit in with our, particularly in the UK, we walk like Victorians. Women, we walk in a ladylike pattern. That's why we're having all our hips replaced, because we walk with our knees together, not making the figure of 8 that we are supposed to make with our pelvis. We walk from the hip, and it's destructive to hip sockets. So, but that's another podcast.
I was going to say.
So, getting that fluid flow, get your arms up above your head. I love the fact my daughter, I have a teen in the house, she hangs through the doorway. So she puts her hands either side of the doorway and she hangs through the doorway. Used to be a total no-no in my house because you mark the wall and all of this stuff. But actually, we've limited our range of movement now. I was in the supermarket a few years ago and I saw somebody reach up to the boot of their car and press a button and the boot automatically shut. I'd never seen that before. And I sat in my car and I just thought, shit, we don't even reach our arms up above our head to pull the boot shut anymore. So when else do we put our arms above our head? And of course, we know that 80% of breast cancer tumors are in the upper outer quadrant, i.e. in your armpit. So there's a movement aspect to that. So fluid flow is key, and that is dancing around like an idiot in your kitchen. That's going to whatever movement modality you enjoy, but you must move. And then the other one that I wanted to share to you today is one of our primary gravity techniques, which is how do I feel? So how do I feel fires the frontal cortex, which is the thinky brain. So you say, how do I feel? And I go, oh, I feel great. I was on this podcast with Natalia and Paul and it was epic level and it was great. And then, I'm having a crap morning. I had to go and do this podcast and then my battery went flat. But it's all external environment because this is the thinky brain. It's assessing like, dislike, takes you towards what you don't like, away from what you don't like all the time. So the thinky brain's straight in with this assessment of how it thinks we should be. But it's not a true account of how you feel. So we measured this in the lab and fascia responds somewhere between 3 and 5 minutes. So lay down on the floor in your bed, sit in your chair, close your eyes and ask the question, how do I feel? The thinky brain will come in and you just go, that's nice, dear. My teacher of 15 years used to say that. I thought I knew something. And she always used to say, oh, that's nice. And it wasn't until years later I figured out that she was like, yeah, she thinks she knows something. She knows nothing. You go. So that's nice, dear. So we take those stories, because that's what they're. We take those stories and we just leave them, because eventually what will come in is a softer voice. The thinking mind is like a toddler pulling on your hand for your attention. The softer voice of the body will come through and it will say, I feel like this. I've got this thing in my shoulder. I've got this thing in my hip. Some days it's a little bit less. Some days it's a little bit more. But we just look and we take an assessment of how we feel, and that gives us a bench from which to respond appropriately. Sometimes the back pain is worse. We can't negate the mechanics of it. But if we're just ignoring the back pain, it pulls our attention to it. But equally, there were days when I was poorly that I felt a little better. But because the mind gets itself into habitual patterns, I expect the pain to be there. So I've already made a decision before I even get out of bed in the morning. I've already decided my back hurts, my side hurts, whatever it is. And the brain makes this stuff up. So what we want to do with this gravity technique is we want to get back behind that to get a true account of what's really going on for us today. And it is different every day. You know this, Paul. Natalia, you have a daily practice. The daily practice gives you information. It gives you data to assess over time. So you can watch your fluctuations. And we are affected by our environment all the time. We are subject to temperature, humidity, emotions, hormones, other people, all of that stuff, you know.
something happened there with it. I don't know if the sound went strange.
Pema Chodron said, what's it? The definition of stress is other people pushing your buttons.
Oh,
Yeah.
And I just think that's hilarious.
yeah.
Because, you know, we can't control other people. We have to.
No.
It's an inside job. It's an inside job. But, you know, it's that, get that assessment down without judgment. Because, like I say, you know, when I start working with people, how do you feel? And we get them to go in there and how do I feel? And the general feedback is a bit like a shed. One lady said to me, I feel like a shed. How did it get this bad while I wasn't looking?
Yeah.
Really interesting to dig down into this stuff. So we have to go in there and, you know, not name it the woodshed or whatever it is. But also it's not to be unrealistic, you know, just ignore or suppress, or, you know, we have to go in there and roll our sleeves up and start to really look at that. So that's a foundational gravity technique that we use a lot, and you can make it a practice over time. It's useful.
And
Wow.
would you say, I mean, oh my God, there's so much in there. And Caz will be back every week for the next 6 months. Just in case you're wondering. Yeah, I mean, there's just so much in there. And just an off-the-cuff question. How much of chronic pain do you feel is down to how much we feel we deserve or self-loathing, which I know are two separate things?
Yeah. I think I've talked about this before with the pelvic floor issues. We are set up to fail. It's not our fault. We are in a self-deprecating world because that makes you buy stuff. So,
yeah,
and we're not taught. You know, my mum didn't teach me self-appreciation and compassion, and actually, she's now in my sessions, and I'm sharing what I've discovered with her, which is a blessing and a privilege to be able to do that. But my, you know, my main thing in life is I've taught this myself, and now I have to teach this to my daughter, and she's teaching it to her friends, because we're just not taught compassion, appreciation, all of this stuff. What we think, we become. if I think I am this way, then I become it. And that can be tricky because when we're not taught self-love or the trust, I've talked about this before, the trust connection between the brain and the body is broken, then it can be very difficult to come back to. But at school age, we are taught as well. I create this piece of work, I offer it up to my teacher, and she tells me, or he tells me, if it's right. So it's always based on external validation.
Yeah.
From age 5 onwards, which if you look at Adlerian and Jung theory is, you know, we've formed our views of the world between 5 and 7. So if it's always based on external validation, then we're in trouble by the age of 40. Well, we do something about it at 40. We're generally in trouble a bit before that, but 40 is when we reach critical mass. But it's important that we understand that there is no deserving. If you go proper down the woo-woo track, and you guys meditate, and probably most of your listeners do as well, if you understand that you are just an expression of the universe, you don't have to deserve, you just are.
No.
It's a bit Master Oogway, isn't it, from Kung Fu Panda, it just is. Because again, it's just marketing. I've worked hard, so I deserve this thing. I created this thing. Somebody else told me that they liked it. So, therefore I deserve whatever it is that is for me. So, and I definitely resonate with that, Paul, because there was a time when I didn't feel like I was worthy of very much. I didn't feel at all, because much in my life. It was a bit like, oh no, where did it go? Oh, it's come back. Good. Sorry, it dropped out for a second there.
That's okay.
It's that the on the deserving piece, we can get ourselves into it. Bad things have happened to us because we deserve or don't deserve something. What did I do wrong? And actually, we have to be more intelligent than that. We have to go back behind that. And it's not about what did I do wrong or whether I deserve or don't deserve. It's how am I processing my internal, my external world? Are there boundaries that I need to put in place? Are there conversations that I'm avoiding? Because your body is just responding to how we are processing. It's quite mechanical in that way. Brain is fiercely logical. It's putting processes in place to keep you safe. And that was such a revelation to me, was that your body is designed to keep you safe. It's not designed to keep you comfortable. And I had to go away and have a real think about that, because it was like, my body's my friend, so why wouldn't it keep me comfortable?
Yeah.
And you can go right off into a track on that. But certainly I haven't worked with anybody with those chronic pain issues like fibromyalgia and those other pieces that aren't working with some kind of deeply ingrained stress, have got things that they need to process out of the body. The body is just a physical representation or a physical manifestation.
Hello, you're back.
Physical manifestation.
I will come back again.
You're back. You're back.
I'm back.
Physical manifestation.
Yeah, is a physical manifestation of what's going on mentally for you.
Oh, absolutely.
That's where you're chronic pain comes from. And you can. It's controversial to talk about this stuff. I haven't met anybody that I've worked with breast cancer that hasn't had some kind of severe stressy episode, either a divorce or a bereavement or something that's been very, very close to their heart, in recent years.
Yeah.
So and again, you can look at the markers and ring the changes. Goodness, the Wi-Fi is.
That's okay, Caz. We have to have you back because I think what you were saying is just so topical. And, you know, when Paul and I wanted to start this podcast, we were like, we want to have these conversations. We want people to start mastering their own destiny, as sort of cliche or whatever that sounds, but it's not about just putting band-aid solutions. It is about having preventative care. It is about having a hard look at what dis-ease in the body is, not just what the disease is, like not just looking at it and saying, oh, you've got cancer, so we've got to just go to this treatment part. Like, what is the root, like what has led to that cancer forming? Like, and, you know, you talked a lot about, you know, the genetics and changing your genetic destiny. And we didn't even get into the neuroscience piece of it, but, you know, there is that element as well, which maybe we'll talk about on the next episode, because
for sure.
with you, because it's such, there is such a powerful connection in terms of like the fascia work that you do, and the new neurological connections that are created with that work, and how you can, in essence, make your quality of life so much better as you live longer. I think that is such a key message from this whole conversation. It's, you know, yes, we're living longer, but, you know, there is a serious, I don't know what the word is, but this dilemma. And I think this is this wellness revolution that we're trying to start, because it's about, you know, changing what we're used to. And even when you were offline a little bit, we were talking about how we need to bring this into the education, you know, having this part of physical education when you're growing up. And so it's looking at so many different facets of whether it's healthcare or education, but taking that control ourselves. And I shared your mission with our listeners when you were offline for a bit, but I just love that you're changing the mindset, and not just saying we've got to live in this pain. This is just how it has to be. It's like, no, you can take full control, and you can change your genetic destiny. You can help yourself improve the quality of your life before it gets too late. But even if you've let it go till then, you've ignored the red flags, there is still good work to be done. And we're just so excited you're a part of this, and we're extremely happy to have you here today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, your body is a highly intelligent, self-healing organism. You know, it is never too late. My oldest client is 94. So it's never too late to get started. The underpinning of gravity technique is start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. And sometimes that's just laying in bed. Sometimes that's just sitting. So I wanted to take things back and get it more inclusive, more accessible. You know, what if you can't just lay on the floor? What if you can't, you know, just sit on the floor? And many of us can't sit on the floor. So how do we take it back and make it more accessible? But we're so led to believe that we're disempowered. And, you know, the word that you used, Natalia, is control. And we are so much more in control of our own bodies than we've been led to believe.
Yeah,
really
what a bombshell that is, isn't it? I think we're born into perfection and conditioned into mediocre and disconnection, and I feel like we're the most disconnected we've ever been. So connected superficially, but totally disconnected, and that somehow everybody feels so separate. I've got my mind, you've got your mind, your own consciousness, so that therefore I am separate. But at the same time, I can't say Caz Hitchcock without calling into play the entire universe, because that's what we are. And so I think just the simple switch of motion, which blew me away, is that we're not a drop in the ocean, we're an ocean in a drop.
Yeah.
And that I love this, because it's just, you know, we are a collective consciousness, all of us together, and it means something. You know, I think that's where we should be uplifting the others and their lives of our brothers and sisters on this earth walk. Otherwise we'll have to come back and do it again. You know, that's the long and short of it. if we don't get it this time around, I'll have to come back again and do it.
Yeah.
So I like to get it on this shot, really. But yeah, I mean, what a powerful conversation. And obviously we're not scratching the surface really, because I think the majority feel like it's just the way it is, like you say, and we all feel strongly against that I do not accept that path. And a lot of our friends and people close to us, all of us collectively, us three, and people in our network feel the same, that we don't accept that. Let's start questioning that. And there are so many things we are in control of that make a significant difference to how we think, feel, perform, and enjoy life in our expression that is uniquely us, universal intelligence seeking expression through us. We are in our natural state want to expand in mind, body and soul equally, and the thing is, like, we have the power to do that, but like you say, that's certainly glossed over from as early as we can think about, isn't it? And it bothers us, doesn't it? I mean, that's the long and short of it. It deeply bothers us. So that's why we're all here. But thank you ever so much. I really appreciate that. I know we both do massively. And my God, we've got to have you back many. So where can everybody find the world changer that is Caz Hitchcock?
So Gravity Technique is pretty much everywhere. You can find me on YouTube at Gravity Technique. I'm on the Instagram at Gravity Technique. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, obviously with my name, Caz Hitchcock. And yeah, and websites and all of those other bits and pieces. So there's a couple of ways that I work. If you want to come and work with me, I run a little class twice a week on Zoom. So if you want to come and pop in there and see what we do, it's just reconnection, exactly as we've been talking about here, reconnection and intelligent movement, mindful movement. Most of the people in there are working with something, myself included. But it's a beautiful interactive session. And then, yeah, if you're reaching critical mass and you need me on a one-to-one, come and find me. And I'm always happy to have a chat. I'd love to say more prevention, but unfortunately, I think that's humans. We wait until the wheels really fall off it before we seek help. It's some kind of belligerent stubbornness that we have inside ourselves.
For sure.
But yeah, so we're here to support you at every age and every stage.
We'll put your details and how people can connect in the show notes. So don't worry, everyone, we've got you. And thanks again, Caz. Like Paul said, we'll definitely have you back, and we'll see you next week. Just kidding. Enjoy Italy, and we'll definitely have you back. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
Enjoy Italy. Thank you.